Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of the Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now, a couple stories up now about Von Miller, and I'm going to be talking about Von Miller. So you can go click and read the story because it gives a lot of depth and detail in there. And then also you can listen to what I have to say about Von Miller. I'm going to give you 5 thoughts on that signing. And I know he's not what he was, but I do think this is it's a significant move because it can help them, right? So any move that can help them can be significant. Is he a star player anymore? No, but I'm going to talk about just what this means and just give you a few thoughts on the whole situation. So stay tuned for that. A couple things before we get there. Now, we got training camp opening next week. I will be doing a podcast every day during training camp. Whenever they have a practice, I'll be doing a podcast that will come out later that afternoon. So look for that all the time. Those of you who've been around for a while know that I do that, have been doing that for a long time, giving you observations, thoughts or whatever, things that people say, what I see during practice about how guys are looking. So the practices will only be open to fans a few times. So the way you need to stay informed is by following people who are there every single day and can put things in context. So there you go. I will be doing that every day. I'll be having multiple ones next week. Of course, they start training camp Wednesday. They have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm doing this one as a Saturday podcast. How about that? Wasn't planning on it, but thought, you know what? I have a few things to talk about Von Miller. So I'll try and get one on Monday. If not, then there'll probably be one Tuesday. So there will definitely be one Tuesday and with a special guest. So anyway, there you go. That's enough for that. Now, what else do I have to say? Oh, club members, you know the deal. If you want to become a club member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page on your laptop. See the word join, click on that, go from there. I will be starting up the private Zooms again. Took a month off. And for those of you who have been following me, the club members, you would have gotten all those little vignettes and club or members only podcasts about players I've covered, just some memories of guys like LeVar Arrington, Sean Taylor, Bruce Smith, guys like that. So anyway, Chris Cooley, all up there. And then again, I'll be doing the private Zooms starting shortly, a couple weeks. And then during the season on game day, we'll be doing a podcast from the stadium for about 15 minutes, a little live chat. So you can join that, ask some questions, get in and out, get you ready for the game. All right. So there you go. That's it for now. Let's get to, well, actually, I have one more thing to talk about. This time it's about Terry McLaurin because we still don't know what's going to happen there. I still believe at some point they get something worked out because it doesn't make sense not to. This is a guy that they're going to want to, he's under contract. So he's under contract. So eventually, I think he's going to play. Like nobody wants to sit out the whole year. It's never what anybody wants to do. And I know that some guys they have enough money. Could they do that? Sure. But it's just it doesn't seem like something that anybody's going to really want to do. At some point, it'll be in. But I do think you want to make sure that the respected guy in your locker room at some point is taken care of. So, and I think they're not going to get to the Super Bowl without Terry McLaurin. I do think this is a good place for him. You know, I've said that. Anyway, here's the situation. There's really nothing new here. I think we all know that he's very frustrated. We all know that. I think what you also have are two sides that are firm in their beliefs of what should happen. And the one thing I know about the Commanders that Josh Harris isn't going to step in and say, "Get it done." Dan Snyder would have done that for better or worse, and it often was for better or worse. That's what he would have done. But with this group, they go to Josh Harris. Josh Harris gets so much information on every single thing that he's not going to meddle, but he wants to be informed. So this situation where it's Peters and the front office and the owner are aligned in their vision for how things need to proceed. You also have McLaurin, who has a firm belief in his value. And I always tell my kids, nobody can, you're the one who places the value on yourself. So you've got to, that's where your value comes from. Nobody's going to do that for you. You've got to do it. So he is resolute in that belief in his value. So I don't know that it's going to take somebody blinking or caving. I don't like those words. I think it's just going to become, where's it going to go from here? And I think there's going to have to be some level of somebody's going to have to give a little bit here. So, and ideally it's both sides give a little bit because that's how you can get things done. Anyways, that's the latest there. Stay tuned. We'll see what happens. I don't know as far as hold out, hold in. As he said, he's not going to be on the field unless there's something else. So, but will he hold out and then be fined? It's 50, a little more than, I think it's 50, 55,000 a day, 50,000 a day. And can't, that's a lot. That turns out can be a lot of money. And, um, but we'll see. But if you're in, you're not getting fined. So anyway, stay tuned for that. Let's get to my five things on Von Miller. Number one, there weren't a lot of options here. So I know a lot of people talk about his age, get to what he has left in a couple of spots, but there weren't a lot of really strong options for them. I know Zadarius Smith was still out there. Matthew Judon was out there. Preston Smith was out there. Obviously, there was talk about could they trade for Trey Hendricks, and I can tell you with that, I don't think that was ever a possibility. The one thing they don't want to do is give up more draft capital next year because they know that they need to continue building this roster. So I never saw, I did not, I don't think that was ever an option. So then it's also you give up draft capital, plus then you're signing somebody who's 31 years old to a long-term deal. Is that your best use of capital? Yes, it could have helped this year as a pass rusher. Wouldn't have helped their run defense, folks, but as a pass rusher, yes, it would have. But instead of doing that, they spread all this stuff around, and they definitely wanted to keep their picks for next year, short of the Bengals saying, here, have them for a sixth, right? So short of that, that wasn't really an option. Zadarius Smith could have helped you inside, outside. I think with Vaughn, part of the difference was, and yes, he's a situational pass rusher, but I think that's really what they wanted. And you can look at Dante Fowler's role last year as that's kind of the blueprint for what they expect for Von Miller. Now, the difference is Fowler had to end up playing more because they didn't have the depth at defensive end. They had some injuries. So he got pushed into a role that he probably shouldn't have been, or should not have been. And he is a situational pass rusher. That's what they wanted Dante Fowler to be, and that's what they need Von Miller to be. Something happens to guys ahead of him, there's way more depth along the defensive line than there was last year at that spot. So they're in a better spot to then absorb a situational pass rusher like Von Miller. So do not look at him as like he's going to start. He's not going to start. If you can get him to 15, 20 snaps a game, that's good for him and get a lot of those in the fourth quarter. I'll explain in a minute. That would be a good spot for him. He's 36 years old. He still must pass his physical. So that'll happen on Monday. He'll come in Monday, pass the physical. We'll talk to him on Zoom. Again, I told you Zadarius, Matthew Judon. I think in the fourth quarter, Von Miller's stats were pretty good. I think that's something that they're going to look at. I also think this is the kind of situation that they liked last year when they brought in guys like Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, and then getting a guy like Deebo Samuel. They're at different points of their career, right? But they are guys who can not only contribute on the field, but contribute in other ways. So you saw like Bobby Wagner, how he was with some of the, with other players, with Jaden Daniels, Zach Ertz with Jaden Daniels, and just the mentorship that goes on. Bobby Wagner with a lot of people, and Zach Ertz with others too. But there was a lot with them. Watching Deebo Samuel with Mike Sainristil in the spring, going up, working with him after practice on certain routes. That's what Von Miller also brings. So you don't listen, you want to sign guys who can play and do that at this stage. And I think Von Miller certainly can do the mentorship stuff, right? Because that he started this pass rush summit in 2017. That's been his baby. Now he's handing it off a little bit to some others, but that's been his baby. But then and he likes doing that. The other guy who can benefit from that, Josh Connolly Jr. He'll go up against him in practice. You know that Von Miller is going to really test him, but also then work with him. So I'll give you an example. Like if you remember Bobby Wagner last year, there was a play in training camp where Sam Cosmi, just before the snap, Bobby Wagner started yelling out, he's going to pull, he's going to pull, he's going to pull. And Cosmi's like, how did you know that? He could just tell, I could tell by the way you were leaning that you were going to pull. So little things like that help guys. When you have somebody that's smart and savvy, and then you're able to communicate that and tell them, that helps. So I think he'll help Josh Connolly and really test him in a lot of ways, and that's a good thing. So I don't know, any starting defensive end, I think is going to test any rookie at this point. But then you get a guy like this who's got 129 and a half career sacks, and they're facing a lot of top pass rushers early. You better believe that going up against him is going to help. Whatever he has left, he still has tricks in that bag that for training camp practice and workout and one-on-ones, that should definitely help. So those are things I think that also made a difference here. But really, it's about something else I'm gonna get to with number two. Excuse me, number two. Like a good salesman, always be closing. ABC, Michael Scott, right? Always be closing. So that this is the whole thing. Their fourth quarter defense stinks. And I think you know that. I went over all these numbers before. Like they were fairly middle of the road with all these numbers for the entire course of the game. But in the fourth quarter, they're a bottom five defense. And so much of it stemmed from the inability to get pressure. They had 43 sacks last year. That's 11th best in the NFL. In the fourth quarter, 5 sacks, two teams worse. That's where you have to improve. That's partly why they played a lot of close games. They couldn't close games out. They couldn't close out Atlanta. They need to go to overtime. They couldn't close out, listen, they're saying there was a blown call in that game, but they got fortunate there. They couldn't close that out against Spencer Rattler. They couldn't get anybody to get pressure on them. So there are multiple games like that. One way to like you can't count on always having that fourth quarter success in one score games. So one way to eliminate it is to close out or always, excuse me, always driving late to score to win. So one way to eliminate them is to do better on defense. And they have to do better on defense. And I also think some of that too, you can look and say in the first, second quarter, are there things that the offense can do better to avoid this? Yes, there is. And I'll get to that at another podcast. But for this team, for example, in the playoffs, now ESPN does, ESPN research has these pass rush win rates, pass rush wins, et cetera. There are some times where I'll look at it and say, like, I don't know if that's a win or a loss, but they have a criteria that they follow, they apply equally across the board. So I'll just kind of, because it's applied to everybody, then we can talk about this. But in the playoffs, in the fourth quarter of the playoffs, Washington had two pass rush wins in 3 games in the playoffs. Two in the fourth quarter. Two in the fourth quarter. Von Miller for Buffalo in 3 playoff games had 3 pass rush wins. So is it a ton? No, but that's one each game or an average, whereas these guys for an entire team only had two. You can't, it's hard to duplicate what they did last year without better success in the fourth quarter defensively. So can he be a part of that? We'll see. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I'm just telling you, like, they need a closer. And I likened him to Mariano Rivera. Could he be that guy for them? That's what he needs to be. He doesn't need to come in and be a 10, 12 sack guy. They weren't going to find that guy. But if you can come and be a 6, 7, 8 sack guy and then create in the fourth quarter, that's a win for this Sun. They need him to be that guy in the fourth quarter. So keep him fresh, keep him ready for the fourth, bring it home. That's what they're really going to need. He doesn't need to play more than 20 snaps a game. Like, you just don't want him doing them. So, like, the other thing is, so the pass rush win rate. Washington's pass rush win rate in the fourth quarter last year was 13.3%. His was 25.5%. Now, he's not playing as many snaps, but that's okay. If he's doing that, that makes them a little bit better because nobody was doing that last year for them. Bobby Wagner was a little over 31 in the fourth quarter, but it wasn't as impactful. So they need to close out better. Can he be that guy? That's what he needs to bring here. I'm not going to sit here and promise you that he's going to. I don't know. There's a lot of questions here. But if that's what he can do, then it's a big win for Washington. All right, number 3. Washington does not have one stud on that defensive line, but what they're hoping for and is making up, you don't have that one stud, but maybe you have more quality across the year. Maybe you make up with quantity, I should say, more depth on that line. I've talked about this all off season. I think but they definitely have better depth than they did last year. How much better they are? Like, are they the best line in the NFC East? No. But do they have 1 through 9, maybe the best depth? Maybe. And because I'd have to check and see what the others are, but the starting 4, well, it's not going to be the best one. We know that the other defensive lines are better, but can you have better depth? Because they're going to have, they like to rotate. So you have a better ability to be fresh and also not just be fresh, but replace one guy with who's not far off from the guy that he's replacing. So you can look at that 2 ways, right? You can look and say, well, you want them to be a little bit more far because you want those starters to be higher quality. However, I don't think it's that the starters aren't good. I just think that there's less of a drop off than was before. Remember, 4 number 1 picks a couple years ago and did squadoosh, folks. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, so I think that's the one thing. I think it also it continues to they continue to have add more options, chess pieces for Joe Witt. Big year for Joe Witt, by the way. But so with Von Miller, now you can could you pair him next to a Dorrance Armstrong at times, moving the end inside next to him? And there's good reason to think that you next to Duran Payne, and I'll get there in a minute about what I think he can do. You could have Von Miller, Dorrance, Duran, or Kinlaw, or Johnny Newton, and then Dietrich Wise. Now, are any of them at this point a dynamic pass rusher? Maybe not. But I think what you're looking at here is you could have more guys capable, you ability to put more guys in the field who are capable of winning one-on-one battles. That's what you want. So if you're not going to have that stub, but if you can put four guys out there who can win one-on-ones, and then you're sending Frankie Louvu as a blitzer, which they're going to want to do, then it also helps you, right? So now you're creating more one-on-ones with guys who are more capable of winning those than they were a year ago. So, I look at the Eagles last year didn't have a monster pass rusher. Now they have a phenomenal tackle. Like, yes, I get that. Better against the run than he is a pass rusher. Josh Sweat was a good pass rusher, had a really good Super Bowl, but I think he only had like eight and a half sacks during the regular season. That's, I think he's a good player, but they did it without a dominant pass rusher because they had other elements to their defense. I'm not comparing the defenses. So anybody ready to whatever that I'm not doing them because that defense was excellent and it still is excellent. But there are other ways that you can help with that too. Trey Amos, healthy Marshawn Lattimore, big question, I know. But anyways, with the D line, like I think there's more of ability to put four guys out there who are capable of winning in a one-on-one battle. And if they can create more one-on-ones, then that's what you want. Now, with Von Miller in Buffalo, I saw that happen. Now, after on Thursday morning after they signed him, I watched some of his stuff in the spring because if you remember, like he was one of the names that I told you that they were that they were looking at and to watch for this time of the year. So I watched some of the stuff back then, see what he had left. I think I even told you at the time, I know some people who are very familiar with his game up in Buffalo who thought he was done. But then when you talk to other people, whatever, little maybe they feel like there's something left. I'll get to some of those in a minute. But anyways, when you go watch him, there are some things he just isn't going to do anymore, but he's going to be 36. You can't expect them. Like he's not the same player he was 5 years ago. Just that's just not who you're getting. You're getting 36-year-old Von Miller. So, but what you would see, you see a lot of chips on him, some a lot of chips. And they also had Greg Rousseau on the other side. So like he would get chipped too. That was one thing that you'd see for sure. But you'd still see he had the ability to beat guys, and he had ability to not not always beating them, but also to threaten. And I think they were aware of that. So a lot of times enough times you'd see a defensive tackle inside and maybe slant inside a little bit, and the guard would pass him off, but immediately not just pay attention to Von Miller, but step to him because they're aware of that little spin move to the inside. So what that would do is creates a one-on-one for the tackle inside. That's what you have to take advantage. So can that help Daron Payne? Like they've been thrilled with Daron Payne this offseason. Can that help him be a more effective pass rusher, get home a little bit more? Maybe a Javon Kinlaw. Kinlaw's quick. Dorrance Armstrong, he's rushed inside in Dallas and he did some last year. So can he be effective in that way? By creating a one-on-one for him inside, because of Von's presence and just what he's able to do, you have to pay attention to that until he shows you that you can't. And, again, he's had 6 sacks last year, but there were other times where he's creating a chance, creating a one-on-one for you. Then it's up to you. I didn't think Buffalo's interior, when I watched them, did a great job taking advantage of that all the time. But if you can throw maybe a blitz or two off of them, Bobby Wagner coming in, Frankie Louvu coming in, right? Maybe this gets you the ability to move Louvu around a little bit more because you got that speed guy over here. So that's the thing I'm curious to see how that impact is. I'm not guaranteeing, not telling you that that's going to happen, but I think when you're drawing it up for them, that's one of the things you'd have to look at and one of the impacts from last year because that was there. So you did see that, but I think when people say too that, well, he's done or whatever, in relation to what you've seen from in the past, but in relation to what these guys have had, can he still offer something? Can he be a better player than a Dante Fowler? I don't know that he'll get 10 and a half sacks, but can he be a more consistent threat? And again, Fowler had to take on a role that he really wasn't brought here to play because he had to play the run more. But I think with Vaughn, I think, we'll see. Anyways, that gets to number four. And I wonder what he has left. Everybody has to wonder that. 36-year-old. He's had two ACLs. One was a partial, but still two ACLs. He missed, 20, he missed another year with a foot injury. And, that takes a toll. It takes a toll on your game. I mean, you can't, and that's you can't bend the same way. He was so unbelievable with his bend coming around the corner that some of that is not there. He can still get around the corner for sure, but maybe if you lose a little bit of that bend sometimes, then you're not able to turn it the same way. So I definitely saw him get around the corner, and sometimes though it's like putting that foot in the dirt and being able to get inside or to finish the job. You still see him threatening like that. Um, Saw it against the line in Panay Sewell, right? So they're still there, but it's not to the same level, and you shouldn't expect it to be. There was some meniscus issues too with the before the one ACL, but it really led to a torn ACL, and that's trouble. Now he played every game he was eligible for last year. He was suspended for an allegation of assault against his girlfriend. So no comments here. Don't know anything more than that. But just speaking from a football perspective, that's why he sat out. That's why he missed 4 games last year. It was not an injury. He did in 2023. He did play. I think it was 12 games, no sacks. Now I saw an article with him in SI.com in which he said he didn't like he tore his ACL late in the previous year, and as he said, he didn't think he should be playing. He came back because he wanted to play, etc. Said he shouldn't have probably come back. Well, the result was whatever it is. The result was 0 sacks. So, anyways, had 6 last year, had 8 the year before that. So we'll see what he still has left. But that was the deal. But again, when you're this age, who knows? I did talk to one coach earlier in the spring. I think I told you before. They said that you saw flashes of Von Miller, right? This is a coach very familiar with him. You saw flashes, whether against him or whatever, but saw flashes of what he could still do. And he's like, I wouldn't bet against him, against a motivated Von Miller. And then there was a former teammate who had told people like he's still explosive, but you wonder about the toll of the injuries. So that's what, I think that's all fair. He just needs to be a 6 to 8 sack guy. Can he get to that point? And if he got 6 to 8 sacks, but 3 or 4 of them in the fourth quarter, that's going to be pretty good with pressures. That's the key. Pressure. Get some pressure. Force something. Get some pressure. Maybe you get Amos and Lattimore. Sam are still at corners, leading to maybe a little bit of hesitation by the quarterback. Whatever. Like there's a lot of ways you can draw it up that sounds really good, but that's what they need him to be. And the one thing I'll say about him too, with that age though, comes a lot of wisdom. And I think the one thing you notice when you watch Von Miller rush is I think he reads tackles really well. I think he is a very smart pass rusher. Like that's why he led this pass rush. He's not afraid to also share things that work for him, but there are things that he can do that just others were incapable of before, right? But I do think he's still a smart player. He still knows how to read tackles. Like you watch him, he can read a tackle, knows he gets that one arm into you and can drive you back, but also to read the spin, like based on how you're setting, he's really good with those counter moves. And so I think that's still a thing for him. Now, with some of that stuff, though, that's where you wonder about the loss of some of the leg power because that requires some of that leg power. He still has some, just not what it was before all those injuries, but can he still be effective in that way? Well, it definitely was at times last year. So, but he does, like, he reads tackles well. And I think it's one reason why he's been such a good player in addition to the skill set. So, anyway, there you go. Number 5, I think Dan Quinn will be good for Von Miller. And I say that because the veterans love Dan Quinn. He takes care of them. Like you're not going to have to practice every week. He would have Zach Ertz, Bobby Wagner sit out once a week, because the wear and tear on the body. It's a long season. You need to have them down the road, and I think Quinn is very aware of them. So he looks for ways to give veterans time off. Von Miller was never a guy who liked to have or take practices off. Like that's never been my understanding. Like you can talk to people who know him, like that's not what he wants. but it is something I think at this stage you accept, and it keeps you fresh. And if you see, like if you see the benefits of sitting out and then you go into a game and you're fresh and you produce, then you're okay with that. But I think when he was younger, you just feel like, hey, I'm better practicing all the time, keeping that rhythm, et cetera. And I think it also is an indication of how much he likes the game. Because if you don't love the game, I don't think you want to, like Bobby Wagner wants to practice all the time. And like, I always enjoy watching Wagner going through special teams drills or things like that because that's what he likes being out there. And he could say, like, what am I doing this? I'm going to the Hall of Fame, folks. I'm here to call plays in the huddle. But he does the other stuff because I think he just likes being out there. It's kind of cool to watch them. And I think Von Miller my understanding is kind of the same way. I also think that Quinn's style will be a good match for him. Somebody who knows him well is like he likes guys who get that fired up, that passion, who aren't also afraid to tell players like how much they matter, how happy they are they're there, and just having more of a personal relationship with them. That's something that Quinn does really, really well. And I think part of that too comes from he's not responsible for calling the defense. He's not responsible for calling the offense. He's responsible for, as a head coach, part of what he sees as his duty is to get to know these players well and develop those relationships with them. And I also think this organization, you saw it in free agency, like how they treat players after they sign, when they're coming in to sign their contract, and how they treat them. So I would expect a pretty hearty greeting for Von Miller when he comes through the door. That stuff matters. Now, is that going to be the reason why he gets 10 sacks? No. But if you feel good at a place because of all this, that can definitely help. So could that make a difference? Sure. How much? I don't know. But I do think like that's something that Quinn does really well. And where I think like Sean McDermott, really, he's a good coach, done a really good job. Different style, a little bit more somber than what Dan Quinn is, right? It's done again. Style, you have a style that works for you, but I think Quinn's style, from people who know Von, will say like that they think maybe that helps. So, the other thing, like this is a guy, he has 129 and a half career sacks. The Hall of Fame is out there for him, but do you have to get in that top 10 to get there? If that's the case, you need 12 and a half more sacks to pass Michael Strahan, who right now is number 10. So if he wants to do that, like there's part of your motivation as well. And I think the history of the game sounds like it matters to him. So clearly that could be something that helps him. We'll see what that translates to. But anyway, that's the last part I want to make. Anyway, that's it, folks. That's my 5 thoughts on him. We'll find out in time how good of a signing this really was. It's funny because it's not the Von Miller of old, it's the old Von Miller, or it's not, whatever you get the thing. Is it an old Von Miller versus the Von Miller of old? Well, maybe you can have an older Von Miller, but someone who can still help you in the right role, as long as he can stay durable. Those are all in that question. Not going to know that answer until the season gets underway. Anyway, folks, that's it for me. Again, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll be back on Monday with another podcast. Going to get going every day here, folks. So enjoy it. Training camp's just about here. All the speculation is just about over. So I'll talk to you next time.